Taurus, the week of August 3rd to August 8th, 2026, brings something genuinely personal directly to your own sign. Chiron stations retrograde on August 3rd at 0 degrees Taurus, in your own first house of identity and the body, opening a real period of introspection about an old wound tied to your sense of self. On August 6th, Venus enters Libra, her own ruling sign, in your sixth house of daily work and routine, easing tension in collaborative relationships. The same day, the Sun forms a supportive trine to Saturn, retrograde in your 12th house of rest. This week carries less external drama than the full moon convergence of last week, but for you specifically, it's quietly more personal. Since Chiron rarely stations exactly in someone's own sign, this is the kind of transit that tends to arrive once every few decades, not something to treat as routine background noise. Let's go through what all of this actually means for your money, your relationships, and your energy, using the real sky, not generic guesswork. Money and career move with real decisiveness this week thanks to Mars in Gemini sitting in your second house of money and values. This gives you the nerve to actually act on a financial decision rather than continuing to deliberate a purchase, a negotiation, or simply committing to a number you've been hesitant to name out loud for longer than the situation genuinely required. Mars here rewards speaking the actual figure rather than dancing around it in conversation, which is a genuine departure from your usual, careful, unhurried approach to anything involving money, and it's a departure worth allowing rather than resisting purely out of habit. Mercury in Cancer, meanwhile, continues to sit in your third house of communication, keeping conversations about practical, local matters clear and easy to navigate this week. If there's a work-related discussion that's been vague, Mercury's clarity here supports actually pinning it down rather than letting it continue drifting without resolution, which is exactly the kind of open loop that tends to quietly drain more energy than the actual conversation would cost to have. Early in the week, while the moon moves through your own sign, take advantage of the extra groundedness before Chiron's deeper theme has room to settle in more fully as the week continues. This is also a good stretch to review any recurring expense you've been paying without questioning, since Taurus tends to let a subscription or a habitual cost run on autopilot far longer than it consciously chooses to. A short, unglamorous review of where money quietly leaks out each month will feel more satisfying this week than it usually would, thanks to Mars adding a bit of decisive energy to even the most routine financial tasks. If a raise, a rate increase, or a request for better terms has been sitting unspoken for a while, this week's directness makes it easier to actually say the number rather than hint around it. Career-wise, Mercury's steady clarity in your third house also favors short, practical exchanges with colleagues over long, unresolved email threads. A 5-minute conversation will likely accomplish what a week of being forth messages hasn't. A financial document or contract you've been putting off reading closely deserves real attention this week. Since Mercury's precision here makes fine print easier to actually absorb than usual, none of this needs to feel urgent. It simply rewards a slightly more direct version of your usual careful approach to money and work. Relationships take on a lighter, more collaborative tone this week, largely through Venus's move into Libra on August 6th, landing in your sixth house of work and daily routine. This placement genuinely eases friction with coworkers or collaborators, favoring diplomacy and fair compromise over tension that may have built up recently in a working relationship. It's a good week to smooth over a disagreement with someone you work alongside regularly, rather than letting quiet resentment continue building underneath a polite surface. Venus in Libra also softens how you approach daily routines shared with others, a roommate, a colleague, or anyone you coordinate practical life with, regularly making it easier to negotiate a fair split of responsibility than it might have felt recently. The Sun's trine to Saturn on August 6th adds a gentler thread specifically around home and family. Sun in Leo. Your 4th house receives real support from Saturn in your 12th house of rest, suggesting that a family conversation or a decision about home goes more smoothly if it happens from a place of genuine calm rather than urgency. If you've been avoiding a conversation with someone at home simply because you haven't felt settled enough to have it, this particular day offers an unusually good low-pressure window. Trines like this rarely last more than a day or two at full strength, so it's worth using deliberately rather than assuming the same ease will still be available a week from now. If there's someone specific you've been meaning to sit down with, this particular window rewards actually scheduling it, rather than waiting for a spontaneous, perfectly comfortable moment that may not arrive on its own. Energy and health carry the real weight of the week, and it's worth sitting with directly since Chiron's retrograde station lands exactly in your own sign. Chiron represents a wound that never fully closes but can be worked with consciously, and having it stationed directly in Taurus, your 1st house of identity and body, is about as personal as this particular transit gets for you. This asks you to look honestly at an old wound related to how you see yourself, perhaps tied to your body, your sense of physical safety, or a formative moment when you first learned the world wasn't entirely predictable. Taurus tends to cope with this kind of wound by building more and more stability around itself, accumulating comfort and routine as protection. This retrograde period, lasting until January, is asking whether that stability has become genuine security or simply a wall keeping the original wound from ever actually being looked at directly. This isn't a week to solve the whole thing. It's a week to notice it honestly, without immediately reaching for a familiar comfort to smooth the feeling over a specific food, a purchase, or a routine you retreat into whenever something uncomfortable surfaces. There's a shorter note about the broader picture still unfolding. The lunar nodes remain on the Aquarius-Leo axis, with the North Node in your 10th house of career and public standing, and the South Node in your 4th house of home and family. Your growth edge over the coming months lies in stepping more visibly into public responsibility, rather than staying in the more familiar comfort of home. This week doesn't bring a new nodal event, but it continues to shape the background of everything else happening right now. So here's where this actually leaves you, Taurus, heading into the 2nd week of August. Chiron is asking you to look honestly at an old wound in your own sign without rushing to cover it with more comfort. Venus in Libra eases tension at work, and Saturn's trine to the Sun offers a calm window for a family conversation. None of it needs solving all at once, just honest attention where it's due. If this reading resonated with you, hit like and subscribe. And let me know in the comments whether this week's Chiron theme is showing up for you around your body, your sense of safety, or something else entirely.